What's going on, guys? Noah just checking in. Today I want to talk about a mental health topic that pertains to anyone who deals with depression, anxiety, DP, but it can be outliers like schizophrenia, bipolar, personality disorders, whatever. This is a pretty common question and concern that a lot of us who deal with these mental health issues go through, and we want to know how we can tell. How do you know if you're getting better or not? How can you discern whether you're making improvements or whether you're staying the exact same? And it's a really damning question because, as a lot of you know, it's hard to tell. It's really hard to tell, especially when you're with yourself all day, every day, like we are. As opposed to, when you see someone that you haven't seen for a long time and then weeks, months, years later, you can easily spot the differences. That little comment right there sort of plays into one of the things you can do to help understand whether or not you're getting better, and that is to have outside perspective help you make that distinction whether or not you're the same or not the same. Now, that I think is most appropriately done in the form of a professional. So one of the things I would say about trying to figure out if you're making improvements is to get someone on your team who can help you with your progress and help you see things more clearly. There's this wonderful man I support right now who's very depressed, and he's been in the midst of a clinical depression for like a year, and I visit with him every week, and I try to talk with him multiple times per week over the phone. And one thing is for sure, when you're in the midst of a clinical depression, you just can't seem to fucking realize when you make improvements. And I remember this. You're so overcome by the pain of your situation that you don't see change, even little bits of positive change, but you're really sensitive to getting worse. You're really sensitive to going in the wrong direction, but it's hard to discern change, positive change. So I see this guy every week and I tell him, you look great this week. You're sounding so much better than you sounded last week. Depression, mood disorders, anxiety, man, it's a game of subtleties when it comes to improvements, and I can see those subtleties very easily in another person, just like other people could see them in me. So whether that's a close family friend who's a part of your weekly self-care plan, or a therapist or psychologist or counselor, have someone on your team that can help you identify those positive changes. You need to know when they're happening because you can build off them. They give you fuel for the long fight ahead, right? Mood disorders take a long time. Too long. It's not fair. It's bullshit, actually. I can't stand that aspect of mood disorders. Now, that doesn't mean everyone's going to be in them forever. Some people go through situational. Some go through a more traditional 4 to 7 month depression, but some of us end up in it a lot longer, and I'm one of those people that I had to ride it out for a lot longer than a year, and it was really hard. So having people that could tell me how I was improving was important because I didn't believe it, and I didn't want to believe it in a weird way. Another thing you can do is mood journal. Now, for some reason, whenever I bring up mood journaling, a lot of people are like, no, I'm not going to do that. Like as if it's some witchcraft or some hocus pocus bullshit that doesn't have any function or efficacy. Like, mood journaling is really important, and you can keep it simple if you don't want to overly complicate it, or if you don't want to take too much time. But if you're desperate enough like I was desperate enough, you won't turn off or turn away from this simple suggestion, which is to mood journal. And if you don't know how to do it, I'm going to explain to you how to do it, just like it was explained to me, a way that was very functional and achievable, especially if you're in a really bad state. Every night before you go to bed, this is what I want you to do. And this is something I did, by the way, for well over a year, maybe a year and a half. I did this religiously, and it made a difference. I'll explain how. But every night, I want you to write on a mood scale between 1 to 10 how your day went overall. You're gonna take into consideration your anxiety. You're gonna take into consideration your stable time, and you're gonna take into consideration, because I can speak, how depressed you felt. Here's the little catch, though. Here's the little caveat that I need you to be aware of. You're never a 1, so don't ever write a 1. I don't care how bad you feel. 1 means you're strapped down in a hospital bed, fully medicated, and that is not a discredit or that's not me making fun of or talking down anyone who's in a hospital right now. I was hospitalized, so. But for all intents and purposes, you're never a 1. 1 is you're jumping off the bridge. Not to be crude again, but it's as low as humanly possible low, and that low we reserve for, you know, you're being driven to the ER. Just don't write down 1, damn it, is what I'm trying to say. You're never a 1. And on the other end of the spectrum, don't write down 10. You're never a 10 unless you're on all types of hard drugs. Like, otherwise, you don't make it to 10. 10 is pure mania, okay? So 1, you're again, basically dead. And 10, you're manic. You're not happy. 5, of course, is neutral. You just were, you didn't feel good, you didn't feel bad. 5 was a big victory for me when I finally reached my first 5, so don't downplay a 5. But 5 is that true middle ground. You didn't feel happy or okay, you didn't feel depressed or anxious. You just were there, you know, and that's actually, there's something to be said about that. And then I would say like a 2 is extremely severe. You still need, you know, you need to be hospitalized at like a 2 if you stay there too long. A 2.5, 3, 3.5, you're very depressed. You're not doing well at all, but you can stay in the good fight. You're functional to a certain extent. 4, you're just down. 4 is more like dysthymia, kind of chronic low-grade feelings of depression. 3 is when you're a lot more uncomfortable. Like I said, 2, you're severely uncomfortable, feeling suicidal, need to be probably monitored or put in the hospital. And then you work your way up the other direction. 6, you know, you're feeling a little bit okay. You actually got a little hope in your heart. Maybe you're able to enjoy some things just a little bit. You know, things are going okay. 7, holy crap. Those are rare for this guy, but if you can get them, good for you. And then you can go from there. You're rarely an 8 or 9. Those are super rare. Those would be those special moments, you know. I just want you to understand how the mood scale works. I know I just rambled a lot, but I didn't want to send you in blind. That's how I do the mood scale. I would tell you, when I was very depressed in doing this, I was usually between a 2.5 and like a 4. I was usually between a 2.5 and a 4. And of course, I did slip to a 2 a number of times. And I did end up hospitalized, and it fit. But I also, you know, made improvements. And here was the beauty of, and then you're going to make an average. Then you're going to do an average of each day. So you're going to do your lowest point. You're going to do your lowest point and your highest point. So if at the lowest point of the day you were a 3, but at the highest point you were 4, your average will be 3.5. And you're going to do that for each day. Your lowest point, your highest point, and your average. Now, there were days when I was like a 2.5 to a 4.5. I was all over the map, you know, but I just that's the way I mood swing really hard. A lot of us do. And that's normal. That happens. Write down your highest point, your lowest point, and your average. And then I just want you to say a little bit about your day. The bullet points about your day, you can do that in 2 or 3 sentences. Then I also want you to write down 3 things that you're grateful for. It's a sneaky way to slip in a gratitude journal. So your mood scale, like I said, lowest, highest, and average. Bullet points of what your day was like, what happened. And then 3 things you're grateful for. You're going to do this every single day. And I detested this, by the way. I truly detested this for the longest time. I just hated doing it. 1, I was like, man, this is just an awkward reflection of how fucked I am. Now, that's how I felt. I felt like every time I had to write down I was at a 3, or I spent half the day crying in my bed, or I want to kill myself all day. That was the highlight of my day. You know, I remember thinking, why would I want to write this down and be oh so aware of how hopeless I am? That's how I thought it was serving me at first. You know, I just didn't want to trust the process. But what I found, in spite of myself, it was crazy. What I found is that when I look back at months at a time or 2 months at a time, and I averaged out my months, that was the craziest thing, is I would average out my months. I was making little teeny bits of improvement. Let's say my average for one of my worst months was like a 3.5, which is a really rough place to live in. Maybe the next month I average like a 3.8 or something like that. I try not to do anything beyond like 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 1, 2, 2.5. You know, I try to do like 2.3. I try not to get that technical. But the point is, after months, I would have told you I'd made no improvements. I could have sworn that I'd tell you, no, I haven't gotten any better. Everything is just as bad as it always was. But then I looked at the mood scale, And I looked at my averages and I added them up and I came up with a new mean per month. I was getting better. And that made all the difference in the world. I saw that and I was like, those are my numbers. I wrote that down. No one wrote that shit for me. And it almost makes me want to cry thinking about it now, because it was like the first time I proved to myself that I was making some improvements that I wasn't just hearing from someone else. I wrote those numbers. I wasn't thinking back on what I scaled myself a week ago. I just kept putting down what I felt, my lowest number, my highest number, my average, how I was doing my gratitude journal. Suddenly I was scanning the world for the positive with the gratitude journal. That's what it does. It's a really interesting psychology trick. And suddenly my updates were a little less dark. There were still those really bad days that set me back, that made me think I wasn't going anywhere, but the trend was overall positive. That's how you know you're getting better. That's how I knew I was getting better, because I had my doctors and my therapists saying you're making improvements. And then now being well and taking care of someone who's sick, I see how they don't see things for what they really are. You know, you're so lost and blinded when you're depressed. And then I had my mood journal to prove it. Over the course of a few months, 6 months, 7 months, every month was just a sliver better than the other. Even if I was averaging a 3 one month and barely over a 3 the next, I was like, look, there it is. And before I knew it, I was averaging 4s. Before I knew it, I was touching on 5s, getting to a 5. A place of no discomfort and pain. Are you fucking kidding me? It's a life I couldn't imagine for the longest time. So that was extremely long-winded, but I'm going to leave that uncut because that was raw. That was from my heart. And that's one of the things that saved my life. So if you're feeling desperate today, please listen to me. This is an option available to you. It works. It works. So just don't fight it. Don't fight it. Just try it. Blindly follow me on this one, and you'll thank me a few months down the road. Be brave in whatever you face. Stay strong, 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute at a time. You can get through what you're going through. Someone always broke it down like that for me. Every hour, every minute, you can just get through the moment you're in until the next one comes. You'll get through that too, and before you know it, you're going to be living a life worth living. You just have to be brave and hang in there. So thank you for watching this video. We'll see you guys in the next one. I hope this was of some use to you. And just know, in the most pure sense of the word, I love you. And I'm sorry if you're suffering. And if you're doing well, spread this to someone. Share this to someone who's not doing well. I'm not saying share the video. Just share the information. I don't need it to be my face spewing it. Lord knows I was all over the place in this video. 12, 13 minutes. Good God. Later.